Hi, Corey Swan, Service Manager at the Mark Costello Company. This video we're going to talk about the Partlow controller you see behind me. This is the standard controller you see on most of our sterilizers. You won't see it on the vacuum vessels, but you will see it on the gravity vessels. Now, we're going to cover some of the things that I get asked most often, or by phone call or in person, about the controller, such as how do you set the temperature, chart changes, programming. So we're going to cover that quickly in this video. The first thing I want to tell you is that it's a standard 24-hour chart graph. Now it is programmable. It can be a 7-day, and whatever range you want, we normally go with 0 to 400, 24 hours. Sometimes we go 0 to 400, 7-day. The other thing about this controller is if you ever lose the default settings, and we'll get into this more in detail later, but just inside the cover on the right-hand side of the control panel inside, there is a nice little tri-fold card which we write all the defaults, so that if you ever lose your settings in there, this will tell you how to get back to point A so that you can put in your temperature setting and go from there. Now, this is the area we're going to be dealing with on the controller. This is called your LED. This will illuminate what we're going to do here. You have 3 keys. One is a circle with an arrow on it. We're going to call that the scroll key, and then you have up or down. Now, to put in the settings of this controller, you're going to want to switch it over to the program position, and it'll say PROG. Some people call it PRO9, but this is the program setting. Now from here you want to start with pushing your scroll key. Push it once, it'll show you a set. Push it back, calibration. These are 2 things we don't need to deal with, and neither do you. If you mess up the calibration, it's got to be sent back to the factory. So you don't really want to get into that. Now from the program key, you're going to want to push down. This is just a single pin unit, so we're only going to have 1 set of settings. So now we're in pen 1. Now this is how we set our chart drive. So if we push this again, if we push this down, it'll go to speed. Then we'll push the scroll key and you can go up or down. It has several settings, but we only use 24-hour and 7-day. Once you're back on the setting, push the scroll key to escape, and then the up key to get back to chart. And then you'll be able to push the scroll key to get back to pen 1. Now for programming your controller, what we're going to do is we're going to push the down arrow. INPS. That's your input signal. And on this particular controller, in that chart I showed you, it gives you a whole list of different settings, but we're using a thermocouple with a range of 300 degree minus to 800 degree positive, or I believe 800, it may be 7. So 5 is the desired setting. Unless you're doing it in a metric controller, then your setting will be 6. Scroll again, I-core. I-core is adjusting the pen arm. You can digitally, if your thermometer tells you that your controller is running at 10 degrees higher, you can correct it by going up or down. Once you get to 0, up or down, and that will move the pen arm to calibrate it with your settings. The next setting, I went too far, so I'm going to start all over. And we're going to go back to IMPS, then our I-core. Now A1. A1 is your alarm. You always want it on high because this is set for high temperature, not for cold temperature. So always on high. The next setting, display. of course you're going to want the display on. That's how you see what's on the LED. Next one is the DOPS, which is basically decimal points. We don't use them, so it's always at 0. Chart up. Well, again, I told you before that this was a 0 to 400 range. So chart up is going to want to be 400. Chart low is going to want to be 0. Now, that's where you get into where if you have different size charts, you can change the range to meet the chart. But the standard chart you're going to see is 0 to 400. Next, this is for how quickly the inlet valve modulates. So the lower the number, the quicker it's going to open and close, because it'll do it shorter. 3 is about 3-degree difference, 2 is 2-degree, 1 is, we find 3 is just about right. DFF, that's always at number 1. I don't have a real good explanation for what that means, but it's always at number 1. The alarm, again, the alarm is always going to want to be on. That's what controls your relays, that tells your valves to open and close at the appropriate time during the cycle. Now we're done with that section. If we were going to get out of this, you have to go all the way back to INPS and push the up arrows until you get back to program. Then you merely switch it back to run, give it a few seconds to reboot, and then comes the part that I get the most calls for, is setting the temperature. And I want to explain briefly why it goes out of position. It's not anything to do with the controller. It's usually operators, and it's not done with any malice. They really don't know they're doing this. But you have an option where this is your ambient temperature inside. So you can push this once, and that says CC, which is change chart. Push the down arrow and the pen comes down. You'll be able to unlock the chart in the center, remove it, put a new one on. And once you get it set with the correct time per the arrow and the chart, you merely push the up arrow to go back to ambient. And this is where this usually happens. When they push this, they get it in the wrong position. Once is for changing the chart. 2 times will go to your set point. And to set your set point, you merely go up. Say you want to go 280. Then you go to the next setting. Now the next setting is going to be 300. That's a limit. You may have this 1 or 2 times. So I pushed it again. Of course, I accidentally double punched it, but it has it 2 times and then goes back to the ambient temperature. Now I realize that it sounds kind of funny, but when they do the temperatures or chart changes, they sometimes move the temperature. And then for the person that has to reset it back to the correct temperature, this is not a hard thing, but I also understand it's like a VCR or maybe a well, not VCR, but some kind of piece of electronic equipment that you just don't use very often, and you know how to do it, but you can't quite remember. So the purpose of this video is to help remind you. And that concludes this video. Thank you.